Confused about the best type of cardio for menopause? Take the guesswork out of it. I'm going to give you 3 types of cardio in this episode and the frameworks for them. The third one is going to surprise you. Frame your cardio with these 3 paradigms. I want to thank Orange Theory for making this educational series possible. We're going to start with improving aerobic fitness. Then we're going to talk about using cardio for calorie burning if you happen to be in a fat loss phase. And then we're going to end with cardio just for the enjoyment of doing cardio. Before I discuss the details of cardio programming, I want to review the 3 categories of experiences that women have as they go through menopause. Now, if you've watched some of the earlier episodes, you've already heard me discuss these. And the reason why I'm going to keep beating this drum is because we're lacking this context for women that are going through this phase, especially in the fitness and healthcare industry. We don't have a ubiquitous experience that women go through when going through menopause. So the 3 experiences that I have noticed is there are cruisers, grinders, and train wrecks. Let's start with the cruisers. A woman who's going through menopause who has a cruiser experience is actually just cruising through menopause. She doesn't have night sweats, or the vasomotor symptoms are not very much. She's recovering from her workouts, not gaining much weight, and really doesn't have a lot of anxiety level. And then we have the grinders who don't have it as bad as the train wrecks, but not quite as good as the cruisers. They may have some vasomotor symptoms like night sweats. They may not recover quite as well from their workouts, and maybe they gain a little bit of weight, but they're able to lose it. Now let's go to the other extreme. These would be the train wrecks. Now this is the saddest of the experiences. These are women who have really high levels of anxiety, and sadly sometimes that actually can lead to depression. They have joint pain. They are gaining a lot of weight in some situations and have a very hard time losing this new gained body weight. We might have a lack of ability to recover from their workouts. So again, this is the worst of the experiences. And the reason I want to keep rehearsing these experiences is because it's not acknowledged. And I want to make sure that we're acknowledging the women that are having this experience. And one thing that I've learned is that women who've embraced a fitness lifestyle, it's those women in this having a train wreck experience that's extremely difficult. And if you think about this, women that have embraced a fitness lifestyle, they've done everything right. They've exercised consistently. In many cases, they're tracking all of their food intake. And yet, things are not moving the way that they used to move. And how do I know this? Well, because you have reached out to me. And at this point, I have thousands of communication points. Some of you, even through this YouTube series, have communicated with me. Others on social media over the last year or 2. So this is something that I'm hearing and I'm getting knowledge of. And again, if you watched the first episode, you heard my wife's story. But this message is not being broadcast to the fitness community at large. That's why this education is so important. And what I want to do is, if you are struggling, I just want to encourage you to not give up. Yes, you might not be able to exercise at a capacity that you're used to doing. Maybe you do miss more workout. And the temptation is, I'm just going to stop, but what does it matter? I just want to encourage you, please don't stop. What is your capacity to exercise? Again, maybe it's not as often. Maybe it's not as intense as what you used to do. But don't stop. The benefits are still there for you. In particular, pay close attention to your ability to recover from your workouts. And this is why I like these categories of experiences. You exercise according to your capacity to recover. And again, this is what I really don't like about a lot of the language. We get black and white statements about you need to do this, or you should stop doing that. Well, what if we tell a woman that she shouldn't do a certain form of exercise, but she's having a cruiser experience? She's enjoying her exercise. She's recovering from her exercise. Why would we tell her to stop doing a form of exercise that she enjoys? And at the same time, we want to be careful that we're not assuming that women are being lazy or that they're overeating if they're having an experience that is very new to them and they literally don't have the energy to work out that they used to, or they're just not getting the same results that they used to get. I also want to mention here, in a future episode, we're going to talk about hormone replacement therapy. I'm not going to mention too much about it now, but I do want to just plant the seed that I would like you to be open to the idea of investigating if it may be right for you. So you need to have that conversation with your evidence-based physician. And also, I want to thank Hone Health for sponsoring this series. If you are interested in considering hormone replacement therapy, please check the link below. If you ask women what they're most worried about pertaining to their health, the number one fear is breast cancer, and some may even say ovarian cancer. Now, while these diseases are serious health problems, it's heart disease that is the leading cause of death in females. In fact, during the menopause transition, we have a big spike in the increased risk for cardiovascular disease. While this is depressing, it leads us to the one type of exercise that protects our cardiovascular health the best, and that is aerobic exercise. Now, as much as I love resistance training, and we have a specific role for resistance training, we also have a role for aerobic exercise. This is to help us prevent the otherwise increasing risk of cardiovascular disease that starts during the menopause transition. I said we're going to look at 3 frameworks for your cardio programming. The first one is I would like you to orient your cardio in a way that will improve your aerobic fitness. Now, what is aerobic fitness? You'll hear some people refer to this as aerobic capacity, or you'll even hear scientists like me refer to it as VO2 max or maximal oxygen uptake. And in simple terms, what aerobic fitness is, it's your ability to deliver oxygen to your muscles. So essentially what we want to do is we want to get oxygen from the air. So I always like to point out here in the air is a lot of oxygen. We want to get as much of that into our bodies and deliver it to our muscle. The more oxygen you can extract from the air and get to your muscles, the more fit you'll be and the more healthy you'll be. Think of all of the systems that have to be operating at a very high level in order to do this. So let's start with the cardiorespiratory system, and let's just think of the lungs when I mention this. The goal is to get as much air from out here into our lungs, and the only way we're going to do that is if we have healthy, functioning lungs. Now, once we get the air into our lungs, we have what we call oxygenated air. The next thing that happens is the oxygen in the air transfuses into the blood. And now this blood will be transported to the heart. So this is the next bodily system, our cardiovascular system. Once we have this blood with oxygen at our heart now has to pump it to the rest of our body. And we need to have a strong, functional heart to do this. That leads us to our vascular system. We want to transport this oxygenated blood to our muscles, but we want to make sure that our blood vessels aren't obstructed. We want them to be healthy and open. Now, this blood with oxygen in it is at our muscles, and our muscles have to be healthy in order to uptake or extract this oxygen from the blood. And ultimately, it's going to take this and deliver it to our mitochondria. So think of all of the healthy contributions of our bodily systems that have to be functioning at a high level. Our cardiorespiratory system, our cardiovascular system, our muscular system, all of these, when we train intelligently with our cardio program, are going to be optimized. And it is because of optimizing these different bodily systems that is our best defense against chronic disease. What's the best way to train for aerobic fitness? Well, there's a lot of ways you can do this. I'm going to mention one that happens to be a very efficient way, and that is training with a high-intensity interval training approach. Now, I like to use the term sprint interval training, so I'm going to use that term. But essentially what sprint interval training is, it's exercising with very high intensity or maximal intensity, and then lowering the intensity and recovering. What mode of cardio is the best type to do sprint interval training? Well, that's easy. It's whatever you enjoy the most. If you like to run, run. If you like to do your cardio on a rowing machine, use a rowing machine. If you like to swim, swim. If you like ellipticals, use ellipticals. Again, We want to match what you like to do because that's going to make you do that exercise more consistently. Remember, this sprint interval training, near maximal intensity, then recover. Repeat this for a few sets, maybe work up to 6 or 8 sets, and that's it. This is not a high volume or hours and hours of exercise. Okay, let me highlight one research study specifically conducted in early postmenopausal women. Now, these women were in their 50s, and what researchers did was they divided them into 2 groups. One was a sprint interval training group, and the other was a control group. And this study was an 8-week study. While the control group didn't do any exercise, the sprint interval training group did this. They put them on a stationary bicycle and they sprinted as fast as they could for 8 seconds, and then they recovered, or they just lightly pedaled for the next 12 seconds. Then they repeated this over and over and over until the entire workout was over in 20 minutes. 8 seconds of sprinting, 12 seconds of very light pedaling. Over and over and over for the entire 20-minute period. They did this workout 3 days per week. At the end of the 8-week study, the sprint interval training group improved their aerobic fitness by 12%. Also, they lost a significant amount of body fat. They lost about 1 pound of body fat, while the control group, not surprisingly, didn't lose any body fat. Also, the sprint interval group lost some visceral fat as well. And, what was a little surprising to me, they actually gained a significant amount of muscle mass as well. They gained about 1.5 pounds of muscle over this 8-week training period. This was only 8 hours of total exercise over the entire 8-week study. I always like to educate my university students about the exercise stimulus recovery adaptation model. So when we're doing exercise, we'll use cardio in this case. Now let's just use sprint interval training. In that study, the sprint interval workouts acted as the stimulus to their bodies. And what did that stimulus increase? The stimulus was the high intensity interval training, or the sprint interval training, that was done 3 days per week. The recovery is what happens after the workouts are over, the next day when they're not doing any cardio exercise. And it's during the recovery that their bodies were adapting. With this in mind, as much of an emphasis and a priority that you put on your training, as we're going through menopause, we have to put as much focus on your recovery. And this is where the context comes in. Some women are not going to recover as well as other women, and we have to adjust the volume, sometimes the intensity of what we're doing in our fitness programs. So we want to exercise, but we want to adjust our exercise around our ability to recover from that exercise. Also, you don't have to do sprint interval training to improve your aerobic fitness. As long as you're doing some type of high intensity interval training, that will be a stimulus to improve your aerobic fitness. Now, walking is a great form of exercise, but low intensity forms of exercise are not going to improve your aerobic fitness. Now, it doesn't mean we don't want to walk, or it doesn't mean we don't want to do low intensity exercise, but we don't want to solely do that, because it is the high intensity exercise that provides the stimulus to improve our aerobic fitness. Let's move on to our second reason for the role of cardio in your fitness program. And the fact is that cardio is a powerful stimulus for fat loss. And while we're on the topic of using cardio as a stimulus for fat loss, let me give you a warning. Now, I have a vast network of fitness professionals, coaches, health coaches, bodybuilding coaches, and what they communicate with me, and sadly this is mostly referring to their female client, is this. They will have a lot of female clients asking them for coaching, and they're coming to them doing 2 things. They've embraced a crash dieting mindset, which means they're eating very few calories, and they're pairing that with high volumes of aerobic exercise. And let me tell you, that is a recipe for disaster. It may look like it's working in the short term, People will step on the scale's going down, but I'm telling you through years of experience, this is what I like to call fool's gold. What happens with this type of training, women lose a lot of muscle. And as soon as their diet is over, their bodies are literally acting like a sponge to soak as much body fat as they can. So what I've seen many times over my career is that women will rapidly regain the body fat that they lost. And in many cases, they gain more body fat back than what they initially started with. So this serves as a warning. We don't need to do hours and hours of cardio and starve ourselves to lose body weight. That is a very poor way to go about this. What I typically do when I'm helping someone implement cardio into their workouts during a fat loss phase, I'll just say, I'll try to keep it simple. What do you enjoy doing? We'll do that. For example, during one of my recent fat loss phases, what I did was I was resistance training 3 days per week, and then I added in 3 days of cardio. One day I would run for 30 minutes, another day I would walk for 30 minutes, and then a third day I would run a mile as fast as I could. So I would constantly be switching up my aerobic exercise, but I was using the cardio to help me get into a negative energy balance state. Is there a best form of cardio that you can do? Yes. Do what you enjoy. Again, if you enjoy the type of exercise you're doing, you're going to adhere to it. You're going to continue showing up day after day and week after week, and that is the goal. If you're using cardio as a stimulus for fat loss, the goal is to use the cardio to put you into a negative energy balance. But remember, we want to avoid the extremes and avoid a mindset that we have to just pile on hours and hours of cardio. As an example, if you enjoy treadmill running as your favorite form of cardio, I would encourage you, find a level of intensity that you enjoy the most and then do that. Now here's Cassidy and Valeria. They're going to show you the different zones of cardio, and maybe one of these zones is a cardio that you like the best.
All right, so we're gonna be explaining zone training today for you guys. We're gonna be talking through zone 1 through 5. First, we're gonna start with zone 1, and Valeria is gonna start out with a walk on the treadmill. So zone 1 training is going to be at about 50 to 60% of her age predicted heart rate max. Now, examples of this might be a light walk, or a slow cycle, or even a slow jog. So she is just going to be exercising at a relatively low intensity here, to the point where she can still very easily talk. This type of training might be good for your recovery days, good to just get some movement in, and it is very easy effort here. All right, getting into zone 2 now. So you can see she has increased both the grade and the incline on the treadmill. So an example of zone 2 training would be training at around 60 to 70% of her age predicted heart rate max. Now, in this state, she is doing a brisk walk, but it could also be an example if you are doing a light jog or a more moderate cycle. Here, the goal is to build that base endurance, so it might be some long, slow distance training, and she can still talk relatively easily, but talking does become a little bit harder, and the effort is a little bit higher in zone 2. All right, getting into zone 3 training now. So you can see that Valeria has increased the speed on the treadmill, and she is doing a little bit more of a moderate jog now. Now, the goal for zone 3 training is to be between 70 to 80% of her age predicted max heart rate. So this is a little bit higher intensity. This is where talking becomes a little bit more difficult. And here we are looking to sort of build more of cardio conditioning. And for zone 4 training, we want her to be around 80 to 90% of her age predicted max heart rate. For this, we are going to give the example of a high intensity interval session. So this might look like sprinting on a treadmill, or even if you are doing repeated bike sprints, and she is going to be running at a higher intensity interval. For this example, she'll be running for 20 seconds, and then she will be doing a rest interval at a lower intensity. All right, so now we can see this is her recovery interval with that high intensity interval training she did in zone 4. So the goal is to have her heart rate between 80 to 90% of her heart rate max during those work intervals, and then she is going to follow that up with that recovery interval. So here she has decreased the speed, so she is doing a brisk walk. Once she has completed her rest interval, she's gonna go right into her next high intensity sprint interval on the treadmill. All right, so our last zone is going to be zone 5 training. This is our most high intense zone. So we are looking at Valeria trying to have that heart rate from 90 to 100% of her age predicted heart rate max. So for this example, we are doing a sprint interval on the treadmill. You can also do bike sprints. You can do any form of high intensity sprint training here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna bump that speed up on the treadmill. So Valeria is doing an all out sprint for about 10 seconds here. And we start now. She is gonna sprint as fast as she can for 10 seconds. And then she's gonna safely come off of that treadmill. We are gonna decrease the speed and she is gonna go right into her recovery interval. And then we are going to want to repeat that for your zone 5 training.
A great way to make cardio more enjoyable for some people is to do it with a friend. Or maybe you will want to consider having a coach-guided group fitness class. These are great strategies to help you be consistent and to enjoy the process more. And that leads me to the third and final reason of why you want to do cardio, and that is because some people love it, they enjoy it. If you enjoy it, embrace that. Don't let people tell you, you shouldn't be doing that, or you should be doing a different type. Do what you like. And remember, enjoying your exercise is the goal. So what kind of cardio do you do? Comment below, tell me what you like. Have you done different styles of cardio where you found that you get better results from one form or another? Let me know, educate me, and tell me what your favorite kind of cardio is. And while we're talking about cardio, we are filming in an Orange Theory studio right now. And did you know that Orange Theory doesn't only offer cardio programming, they also do strength programming. And I want to thank Orange Theory for making this series possible.